Hey everybody, it's Janice with Creating to Chaos, and today we're going to take 4 recycled items and make snowmen. So for the first project, I'm going to use this Pringles can, and it's a mini Pringles can, the snack size one. I started off with a paintbrush, and I gave it a coat of the color Light Buttermilk by Deco Art. And once I had it all painted with that, for the second coat, I did a sponge dauber. Once this coat was fully dry, I took a sponge dauber with the light buttermilk and I pounced the rest of the paint on for the second coat. This helps give better coverage, but it also gives it like a textured look, which I really wanted for the snowman. So I just run around, gave it a second coat with that. Once I had that all painted and it was all dry, I'm going to put a little bit of sand in the bottom of this, and then I am going to glue the cover on so that the sand doesn't dump out or get anywhere. So I'm just going to run a bead of glue around the top of the Pringles can and then just pop that top right on. Next, I am going to take a sweater that I got at a thrift store and I cut one of the sleeves off of it. So I'm just going to find my sleeve here and just cut it to size. So I just kind of guesstimated by putting it on and then figuring out about how big I wanted it. I'm going to just cut it off right there. Once I had that all cut off, I'm going to add a little bit of polyfill to the inside of this just to kind of take away from the roundness of the top here. And then I'm just going to tie off the top of that. And I'm just going to use a strip of ticking fabric to do so. So I just grabbed a piece of red and white ticking fabric and then I'm just going to tie it off at the top. And trim those edges down. Kind of fluff out my top here. And look I love that hat. It looks so, so good. Once I had that all attached and how I wanted it to look, I took a paintbrush and I dipped it in black paint. And I'm just using the handle. And that's how I'm going to make the eyes. Once I have the eyes on, I'm going to take a brush and dry brush some pink onto either side for the cheeks. Then I'm going to take another paintbrush and I'm going to dip the end again, the handle, into the black paint and make some dots for the mouth. Then I'm going to take some orange paint. I use the color Burnt Orange and a small paintbrush. And I'm just going to make like a sideways carrot for the nose. And fill that all in. And I'm just making sure that I get the point on the carrot and it all filled in. And I want to make sure I got that round edge as rounded as I wanted it. Once I have that all done, I'm going to take another thin paintbrush and I'm going to paint on 2 eyebrows right above the eyes. And then I'm going to take another thin paintbrush and I'm going to put some white lines on either eye, just on the sides. And then I'm going to add a white dot to each one as well. And I just used a pencil tip for that. Next, I'm going to go around and add some snowflakes. And I just used white paint. You can't really see it on video, but it does show up in person. So I'm just taking the white paint on the buttermilk paint and just kind of making snowflakes with a thin liner paintbrush. And I'm just crisscrossing lines basically to make a snowflake. Once I have those all on there, it's really hard to see. I'm just going to take the back of a paintbrush and just dab white dots everywhere as well. Then I'm going to take a toothbrush and I'm going to dip that in some white paint. And then I'm going to splatter that on as well. So just splatter it all over the face and all over the entire can. And again, it's really hard to see this on video. So once I have that all on there and it's fully dry, I'm going to take another piece of the ticking striped fabric. I'm going to tie that in a knot around the bottom. And this one was a little bit too long, a little too wide, I mean. So I stripped it down and made it even thinner. And I'm just going to wrap that around the bottom and just tie it in a knot. And that's going to be the little scarf. And then I'm going to trim those tails. Once I have that in place, I am going to add a little bit of greenery to the hat. And I'm just doing it right on the hat brim. I have a little piece of greenery that I had cut out off of a pick. And I'm going to add that right there. And then I'm going to add this rusty star right on top of that greenery. And that is it. This project is finished. I think this turned out so super cute and I absolutely love it. Project number 2, I'm going to take an Amazon bag that I got, and I am going to take any round object that you can, but I use the top of my air dry clay container. But you can do anything. You use a plate, draw a circle onto my Amazon bag, and you can cut through both layers so that you have 2 pieces. I'm going to cut that all out, and I just used a chalk pencil to draw the line around to make the circle. Once I have that all cut out, I am going to glue all the way around it with some hot glue, but I'm going to leave a top part open. So I'm making sure that they're all nice and even, and then I'm just going to glue all the way around the edge, gluing that down, and I'm going to leave one small part at the top open. Once I have that all glued, I'm going to take an X-Acto knife and I poked 2 holes at the top on either side of the opening. And then I'm going to paint the entire thing with the color light buttermilk. And I painted both sides. And this is just light buttermilk acrylic paint. And it took 2 coats. And I let them fully dry in between coats. Once I have that all painted, I'm going to take my rusty wire and I'm going to stick that through one of the holes that we made. And then I'm just going to twist it with a pair of pliers down. And then I'm going to repeat the process on the other side. I wanted the top to be a little bit on the curly side, so I'm just going to take a paintbrush and wrap my wire around it. Kind of give it a curly effect. And then I'm going to do the same thing with pushing it in on the other side. I'm just kind of getting my curls correct. Push it through the other side, and then the same thing is going to happen with my pliers. I'm going to make curly cues to hold that in place. So again, just spinning the wire around the pliers. Once I have the hanger on there, I am going to take a pencil and I'm going to draw out the face. So the first thing I'm going to do is 2 teardrops for the eyes, a teardrop sideways and elongated for the nose. So just making sure those eyes are nice and even. And then the same thing for the nose, except for I'm going to elongate the teardrop. Then I'm just going to draw a smiley face for his mouth. Then I'm going to dry brush some pink on either side of the mouth. I'm going to paint both eyes with some black paint. I outline it and then fill it in, making sure that I'm keeping it nice and even right over those lines that I drew. I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. And I'm just using a really small paintbrush for this. I don't buy expensive paintbrushes because I always forget to put them in water and rinse them out, and they end up drying up and being junk. So I buy the packs of paintbrushes at Walmart or Hobby Lobby that have like 20 paintbrushes in them. Once I had the eyes done, I'm going to use that same liner brush to outline the mouth that we drew. And it's just a smiley face. I did like 2 half circles at either end. And again, just following the line that I drew. Once I have that all done, I'm going to fill in the nose with some burnt orange. So again, just kind of lining out and filling in as I go. And I'm just following the line that I drew with the pencil. Making sure I get that point on the nose. And filling the rest of it in. And this doesn't even look like an Amazon package anymore. Once I have that all done, I'm going to take another small thin brush and I'm going to do a line on either eye on the sides. And then I'm going to put a dot in each eye as well. I just flipped a paintbrush over to do that. Once that's all dry, I'm going to add 2 little lines for eyebrows right above the eyes, and then let it fully dry. And then I'm going to take some Crafters glitter, and it's just basically like glitter clear coat. And I got this at Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to do that all over the whole front here. This will also help protect the painting. Once that was all finished, I am going to add some polyfill inside the pocket, just a little bit so it wasn't so flat. Next, I'm going to take a strip of ticking fabric and I'm going to tie a little bit onto the hanger. And then I'm just going to cut off that excess. Then I'm going to add a rusty bell and safety pin to the ticking fabric. I did that right in the center. And then I'm going to fill it with some greenery. I'm just going to put that right in the top. Cut down those picks so that they're smaller, so that they'll fit inside. And just fill up the little pouch. You could add candy to these. I've had so many people give me some great ideas, but I wanted mine with greenery. And that is it. This is our second recycled snowman, and I think he turned out so super cute. I've had a lot of people ask me to do a gingerbread man out of this, and I think that is going to be what I will do next because this project just turned out so super cute. Next, our third project, we're going to use some of the yogurt jars. These are the Oi yogurt jars. And again, I'm just starting off with some white paint and a paintbrush for my first coat. And then for the second coat, once this coat was fully dry, I'm going to use a pouncer and some white paint. So I'm just going to go over this one real quick with the first coat of the white paint and then let that dry, kind of giving us a good base coat. And then I am going to sponge pounce the white over it. And this will be a good second coat, and it gives us a nice coverage. And then I'm going to let that fully dry as well. Once that was fully dry, I took a marker and I'm just going to draw out the face. I did 2 teardrops for the eyes. Again, just making sure that they were even with each other. And I'm going to take some black paint and fill those in. Once I have those filled in, I'm going to take some orange paint and a thin brush, and I'm going to just paint on the nose. And again, I'm just doing this as I would the eyes. Same thing, teardrop, and then I just kind of elongate the tip of it. Then I'm going to dry brush some pink onto the cheeks. I'm going to draw on a mouth after I get the dry brushing on the pink. I'm trying to make sure that the cheeks are even. I'm going to take that same marker, do 2 half circles, and then connect those with the marker, making a smiley face. Then I'm going to take my black paint and go over that marker. I just did black paint on a nice thin brush and just go right over the line that you made. And I'm just following that line. Next, I'm going to take some white paint and I'm going to draw a couple of lines onto each eye. And I just did 1 small line on either eye on the edges. And then I'm going to add a white dot to the center of the eyes. Then I'm going to add some white dots to the cheeks and some eyebrows. Once it was fully dry, I'm going to add some enchanted shimmer all over the entire jar. This kind of protects the paint, but also gives it a nice glittery look. And I just did that all the way around, and then I'm going to let that fully dry as well. And I just love the way this looks once it's all painted on. It's really hard to see on camera, but it's basically like paint on glitter. Once it was fully dry, I'm going to take some greenery and fill it up. So I'm just going to kind of pull apart a couple of picks that I had and put those in there. And then I decided that I wanted to add a little bit of white. So I added a couple of white berry picks to it as well. And I think that is perfect. And while it's cute just the way that it is, I decided that I was going to add a little scarf down at the bottom. This is optional. You don't have to do it. But I just took a piece of ticking fabric, laid it down, and then tied it in a knot on the edge. You could put this above his face and use it that way, or you can leave it at the bottom. I'm not really sure how I feel about the scarf, but I like them both the same. And that is it. That is our third project, using a recycled item to make a snowman. And I think this turned out so super cute, and I absolutely love it. And I think the white berry picks really help bring out the white in the snowman. Fourth project, I'm going to take one of these creamer bottles that everybody seems to use. My husband absolutely loves them. I don't do flavored coffee, so I just use milk in mine. But I'm going to first take off the label. And then you can fill it here with some sand or rocks, which I should have done, but I didn't. So mine's kind of a little floppy, but I'm going to take some white paint and painted the whole thing. I didn't paint the cap though. I mean, I did get a little paint on it, but I didn't paint the cap. And then I just kind of went around the whole thing and gave it 2 coats of white paint. And I let it dry in between coats fully. Once I had it all painted, I'm going to take another sweater from a thrift store. And this one is a gray one. And I'm going to cut the sleeve on this as well. I ended up taking the cap off because it was too bulky underneath the sweater. So I'm just going to pull the sweater over so I can see about how long I wanted it. And then I cut off the excess of the sleeve. And then I'm going to kind of figure out, how I want it styled, pull it down over the face. I want to make sure that this doesn't move. So I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue under the brim here so that it doesn't move around on me. So just add a tiny bit of hot glue here. And I kind of did that all the way around to make sure that the hat doesn't move around too much. Once I had that all on there, I'm just going to take a piece of twine and I'm going to kind of bundle this top up here and then just tie that into a bow. And again, just making sure that that brim isn't going to fall apart on me. So I'm going to bring this right down and then tie it in a bow and then just cut off the excess tails. Then I'm just going to take the end of a paintbrush. I'm going to dip that in some black paint and I'm going to add 2 eyes. Then I'm going to take some orange paint and I'm going to paint out the nose. So just a small nose, and I just did kind of like a sideways teardrop. And then I just elongated the end of it to make it look like a carrot. Once that's all painted, I'm going to take the back of a paintbrush again, dip that in some black paint, and do some dots for the snowman mouth. Next, I'm going to take a paintbrush and make some eyebrows. Then I'm going to take the point of the stylus. I dipped that in some white paint and added some white dots to the eyes. Next, I'm going to take a strip of this fabric. It's got snowflakes on it. I'm going to wrap that around and then tie it off and make that the scarf. And then just cut off the excess. Then I'm going to take some buttons and I'm going to glue those right underneath the scarf. I'm going to add one there and then another one. Move the scarf out of the way so I can add a second button. And add that other button. Then I'm going to add a little bit of greenery to the hat. And then I had these little foam white balls that look like snowballs, so I'm going to add those to the hat as well, right next to the greenery. And I think that turned out so super cute. And I had this little snowflake. I'm going to add that to the center of the twine bow at the top. Then I'm going to take and add some enchanted shimmer. And I did this to the whole thing. I'm just kind of going around where I have the paint. And I probably should have done this before I added the fabric for the scarf, but that's okay. And then I'm going to let that fully dry. Once that was fully dry, I decided I wanted to add some pink to the cheeks. So I'm just going to dry brush a little bit of pink on either side of the mouth. And then once that was dry, I just added a little of the enchanted shimmer over the top of that to give it some of that same sparkle. It's really hard to see that shimmer, and I really wish you could see it. I let that fully dry, and then I added white dots to the cheeks as well. And then again, I put a little bit of the enchanted shimmer over that. I just couldn't stop. I had to keep going. I love adding little details to the snowmen. It really makes them come to life. I think this project turned out adorable, and I love it. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed these videos. I hope it inspires you to make one and maybe look at your garbage a little bit differently. I think each one of these snowmen turned out so super cute, and they're all different in their own little ways. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and spread the chaos.